Welcome to the BVTV network, coming to you from the UK studios of BizVision. I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. Now, I've got a book in my hand that I find that I've been taking around with me, dipping into it and reflecting what it's saying, because it's got a message that is spot on for our today's leader, channel viewers and listeners. This is the book, Spark, How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. Let's go meet one of the authors, Courtney Lynch. Hello, Courtney.
Hello, Malcolm. It's great to be here, and it's great to be with your listeners and viewers.
So you're where, please?
Today, I am in the Washington, D.C. area here in the United States. It's a balmy hot day here in D.C.
I love Washington itself. I mean, itself, because as we were discussing beforehand, before we opened, it's the buzz there, isn't it? It's just in the bars at the end of the day. You see people chatting and conspiring, and and it's exciting, isn't it?
It is. There's a lot of energy in this town, right? And a lot of change. Sometimes it's tumultuous. Sometimes it's just pure, exciting energy. Yet you're right. The work sometimes happens after the regular day. Lots of connection, lots of people engaging. And we're really doing a great job of reopening after COVID. And so people are getting that energy and that buzz feel back.
Yeah. Well, it is looking like we are starting to get the turn, but obviously, it's a long way to go yet. Hey, Courtney.
Yeah, we're not through it.
No, I had to tell you, we're not.
We're trying to get post-pandemic as fast as we can.
Yeah, we've got to be sensible. No, look, I forgot to say another reason why I like this book is its size. No, seriously, its size. It just fits neatly in your hand or your bag, and I'm talking to authors all the time, and I've got a library of books there, and yours is the smallest, but I don't mean that disrespectfully. All the others are big, and I think I probably need a lectern to be able to read them. This one fits in nicely. I was reading it the other day, waiting for my wife to come out from her second COVID, and it's been with me because it just fits in nicely. So I don't know if that's a sales point, but I think it's important. Viewers and listeners,
you're right on. We wanted it to be accessible, right?
Yeah.
People could read it once or read it with a team and come back to it, and just have it be very easy to access and concise too. We want great best practices, yet we know people are busy, so we wanted to present them as succinctly as possible.
Yeah, and it's a book also that we're going to talk about it later, but it's a book also that I quite like reading something, closing it, and reflecting, because it's the way I learn. If I sit and read a book, then I go through it. I might do a novel on a holiday, for example. What's a holiday these days? I might do that, but I can never remember what the book was about afterwards. But the beauty is because you've got nice little chunks and the personal stories and everything. But you're going to tell us about that later on. Viewers and listeners.
You're hitting a key point, right? That's how adults learn, right? They take knowledge, they reflect, and then they apply it and have an experience. And that's exactly what we designed our book to do. Digestible bites of new knowledge, and then lots of platform creating for reflection. So you get some space from the material, try some things, and then pick back up. So yeah. I love it that you've had that experience.
Yeah, it's true. It just, and of course, something when I get to my brain and my age, it's squeezing that extra bit of information in. Viewers and listeners, my BBTV chat with Courtney will be in 3 parts. Now, first, I'll ask her what she and her colleagues mean by VUCA. Yeah, yes, VUCA, VUCA. Whether we pronounce it that way, but that's what I've been doing. We'll find out. Today's business environment and how leaders need to go about managing it. That's what VUCA is about. In part 2, I'll ask her, how do we go about becoming a spark? And in part 3, I want to dive deeper into an element of skill that I suggest is key to do and have, and that is accountability in leadership. But first, Courtney, can you briefly tell us about you, your co-authors, and what brought you to write the book? And what is a spark?
Absolutely, Malcolm. I'm honored to share this. And I'm guessing everyone who's listening to this discussion is already a spark. It's how they choose to grow beyond where they currently are. Yet they're listening to this for development and they're committed to continuous improvement. And that's what sparks are, right? They're the doers, the thinkers, those that want to bring about change. They recognize that things can be better. And while they certainly can't control the world, right, they can influence outcomes and be a part of that better they'd like to see. And so that's who we were writing for, the spark who wants to become a stronger leader. My co-authors, Sean and Angie on the project, are just great colleagues. We've been connected for years and we have a shared experience. We all served in the United States military. Angie and I were in the United States Marine Corps, and our colleague Sean was a pilot in the Air Force. And so we all almost were accidental leaders, right? We had a desire for adventure and challenge and raised our hand and volunteered to be in the military, yet we didn't realize we would be getting an amazing leadership development experience. And so Sean and Angie and I have gone on to lead in many different roles in the private sector beyond our time serving in the military. Yet we always, whether it's us as parents or us as professionals, rely on those leadership lessons, the very same ones we want to share with readers in Spark.
Yeah, and I think it was Angie in the book. I mean, there's lots of different stories and fabulous, but I think it was Angie in the book who was sat down by a captain after a review where she was told that she wasn't very well liked by her fellow people there. And what great leadership by that captain, who didn't just say, you know, well, you're off the team. He gave guidance. And I think there's some really good mentoring style guidance.
Go or grow. So what do you want to do? And that's the great thing. I mean, you don't see feedback that clear, and sometimes conversations that difficult being had as consistently as they can be helpful to people trying to develop, right? And we were lucky at that time. Angie was in her 20s, right? Formative years for her professional life ahead. And without that, she would have missed some really key blind spots around how she could become better at influencing outcomes and inspiring others, which is how we define a leader.
Brilliant. Let's move into part one, Courtney. Now, today's leaders face enormous challenges in this altered world. What do you and your colleagues mean by VUCA? Yes, VUCA, and how leaders need to go about managing it?
Absolutely, right. And VUCA is a term that we learned in the military, but I see it now, especially in the pandemic era, in lots of uses in the private sector. VUCA is an acronym. What it stands for, the V is volatility, right? And this is describing our working world today. The U, uncertainty. The C, complexity. And the A is ambiguity, right? And those basically are the descriptors of almost every challenge we face, whether it's a managerial challenge around things, process, budget, inanimate objects, or whether it's a people challenge. And so as leaders, we learn to lead as developing leaders in a VUCA circumstance brought about by the friction of military training and then humanitarian and conflict operations all around the world. Yet VUCA is relevant in so many aspects of our lives, not just kinetic warfare or humanitarian service. And so anyone listening here knows there's volatility in their life. There's uncertainty. There's uncertainty for all of us in this season that we're in. There's certainly complexity and how we get comfortable with ambiguity, the unknown. We can't force things as leaders. I said earlier, we can't be in control. And the more we try to, the more we're alienating. Yet we can influence. And so a way to sum it up without even using an acronym is our book is about real world leadership. We face challenge, we face great success too. And how do we prevail and work to influence and inspire across the spectrum of the events we can face?
Yeah, I want to point out something to viewers and listeners, particularly relevant. Recently, I was interviewing a major who was head of the UK's SAS, which you may know, our elite force and everything. And we were talking about conscious leadership. And he said it's a mistake that people think that the military is all about aggressive leadership. There is a conscious leadership element there. And it just seems to me that VUCA is about that as well.
Absolutely, right. And I wholly underscore what the major said about his experience in the SAS, right? to lead well, you have to be actually very authentic and be that conscious and perhaps conscientious leader. And that I learned being a significant minority in the American military, right? Out of 180,000 Marines, only about 1,000 were female officers like I was. And so I was a significant minority class in the organization. And I was taught, don't try to assimilate, don't try to be what you're not, because you'll lose credibility before people have a chance to even see your capability and your differences. What makes you unique is actually what can make us stronger as a team. And that is probably very surprising for people to hear around an organization that's really tough and aggressive, certainly with achieving results, yet also uniformity in the way we dress and the way people style their hair. But that precision was for operational effectiveness. When it came to leadership, it was all about not being one size fits all and really coming into your own, that conscious leadership, that authentic leadership.
Brilliant. Yes. Yeah. Now, just before we move into part two, Courtney, let me remind viewers and listeners to get a piece of paper and a pencil, or pen and paper, whatever it is that available, because I'm going to ask you in a moment to give them a bonus URL. Before we move to that, let me just remind everyone of your main URL, which obviously viewers, you can see it on the screen behind me, but for listeners, let me tell you, it is leadstar.us, and lead is L-E-A-D, obviously, L-E-A-D star.us. And that's my first US one, by the way. Their book, Spark, How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success, is a New York Times bestseller, and it's published by marinabooks.com. Now, what's the bonus URL we've got for them?
Yeah, so thanks, Malcolm, for giving me a chance to share the bonus URL with your listeners and your viewers. This is a site where everything is free. It will be forever freely available. And what it is the companion site to the book. And the URL is sparkslead.us. So it's Sparks Lead Us, Sparks, Sparks, Lead.us. And on that site, folks will find videos with myself, my co-authors, Sean and Angie, handouts and exercises connected to each chapter, slide decks, even certificates of completion for those that go through the book as a part of a team or a community. We designed Spark to help the individual leader develop, yet also to create a free leadership development experience for teams and organizations. And when you go to the Spark site, you'll see the hundreds, or probably up to thousands now, of organizations where thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of leaders have used the book to develop their teams in the workplaces where they lead. So everything there is free, and we're just passionate. At our company, we truly believe better leaders equal better world. And we don't need power or positional authority to be successful as a leader. We can influence and inspire right where we're at. And when we understand leadership fundamentals and how to apply them to the roles that matter to us, great things happen.
So that bonus URL, once again, please.
Sure, it's sparkslead.us, sparkslead.us, Sparks Lead Us. And then that's true. The Sparks really do step up and ignite change and betterment in organizations.
There. I'm sure viewers and listeners, you're really glad now you tuned in. Right, Courtney, I want in. There's no doubt about it. How do I and my viewers and listeners become a spark?
You just keep committing to betterment as a leader, right? You keep stepping and you keep working on some of the core fundamentals of leadership, not changing your personality like we discussed before, but how do you make sure you're demonstrating credibility? How do you have a sense of service towards others? That's not just about great thoughts, but you cross the bridge of intention to action. How do you demonstrate accountability? I think that's a topic we're going to spend a fair bit of time on, and a very important characteristic of a strong leader, right? So just some of these aspects and the others that we talk about, like confidence and emotional resolve in Spark, really do bring you to a position where you can feel comfortable that you have a holistic, actionable, practical understanding of leadership.
I like that point that you made about confidence, because that's what a lot of employees are upset about their leaders at the moment. The lack of confidence or leadership, should we say, during the pandemic. Many leaders have wallowed around, and now their staff is saying, well, you haven't led us in the right direction, so we're off. So confidence is important, isn't it?
It is. People really respond to it. It's interesting. It's one of the most responsive factors of leadership that we project to others. Yet confidence, the science, and we did a significant amount of research. I've been personally just fascinated by confidence my whole career, but in writing Spark, confidence comes from within, right? And this whole idea of fake it till you make it is actually impossible. But what is possible is to truly understand what shapes you into a confident leader. And it's all within us. And when we can get it aligned internally, we can project it externally. Yet think about the pandemic, right? Talk about VUCA, talk about volatile, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. We needed confidence from our leaders, and that's not perfection, right? Confident leaders make just as many mistakes as those of us that potentially lack confidence. Yet it's how they respond to those mistakes. Accountability is a big part of it, and how they keep working on moving through the crisis, not turning backwards or second guessing, but yet shaping circumstances with the new knowledge they have with each great step or misstep.
Brilliant. Yes. Yeah. So do think about your own personal confidence and how you're giving that out, viewers and listeners there. My final part, Courtney, part 3. Let's dive deeper into delivering what I suggest is a key skill, or is it a skill? And that is accountability in leadership. What's your thoughts here and why it's needed and how to do it?
I'm so glad, Malcolm, that you've chosen to highlight this, right? Because I think that how we demonstrate accountability says a lot about where we are on the leadership development spectrum, right? Some of us are very new to leadership and we're just starting to think of ourselves as leaders. Others of us are very well evolved. We've been very self-aware. We've worked to minimize self-defeating behaviors, and we've worked to grow in our ability to demonstrate fundamentals. Yet to figure out where you are on that spectrum, a good way to do so is to see how effective are you at demonstrating accountability. And accountability is a lofty word, so let me break it down. How good are you at seeking to take responsibility before you begin to place blame? And it requires us to override many instincts, right? Whether it's cultural pressures, just how we're hardwired as human beings. We want to self-preserve. We have strong instincts when things go wrong to place blame. We might blame someone else. We might blame a policy. We might be frustrated at a standard. We might blame technology, right? It doesn't mean because we're accountable, we are, again, in control or responsible for the entire world. It's just where we work to begin when we have challenges to resolve, right? When I realize something isn't going well, I work to override that instinct to look outside at all these other factors that are contributing to my challenge. And instead, I look inward. How did I bring about this problem? What did I do? What didn't I do? And how do I resist that desire to place blame? Because when I lead with that accountability, I get the credibility to address the external factors. Sometimes another person needs that constructive criticism. Sometimes a system or a process or a policy needs to be changed. Sometimes technology needs to be upgraded, right? These are real world challenges we face, yet accountable leaders resist the urge to place blame and instead focus on where am I responsible? How can I be that spark? How can I step up and start to influence change in the right direction?
You know, I've worked in the hospitality tourism business for over 40 years. And every time I've been doing any coaching, and it might be on customer service and a guest has had a complaint, you know, I spot whether it's a good general manager or not by the fact of how he handles that or she handles that. And the bad manager sort of says, right, who's to blame? Who's to blame here that this customer's had a bad time? You know,
yeah, they jump on the blame bandwagon with the customer.
Hey,
they deny it's a problem, or they start to hold the customer accountable, right? In our cultures, it got okay to blame everybody else for problems rather than to just say, you are correct. This is not what it needs to be, and let's get you a resolution, right? And
no, I just quite straightforward tell them this fish stinks from the head downwards.
Yeah, and it's a sign that great performance isn't going to happen with that type of flexibility.
Okay, sometimes I've lost a client out of that, but you've got to be straight, haven't you?
You would be a great Marine, Malcolm, with that candor. I bet you were Angie's captain, telling her that, folks just don't value you around here, Angie. What can you do about that?
Yeah, but it is important, as you say, to take your personal accountability of that, because as the leader, you are responsible. Okay, I like a quote, though, that's on the back of this book. And that quote is, it says, leadership is not about job titles, it's about action and behavior. Apart from you spelt behavior in the American way, not the proper English way with the U in, but it's true that.
For our American
spelling. I know. Becoming a spark can help you achieve that. What this channel is all about, being a today's leader. Thanks, Courtney Lynch, for an inspiring interview.
Oh, thank you, Malcolm. And my hope is everyone who's listening and viewing this can find their own spark within and continue to commit to leadership development, because just an ounce of time on growing as a leader allows people to connect all their thousands of hours of learned experiences and their technical knowledge so that they can influence and inspire people better.